We'll call the meeting back to order.
Say something?
Of course.
First off, on with Dem's on the thing here, I just noticed that, on Wheatland Housing Management Body, there's 10 board members. Wheatland Hospice Association is a board member by decree of
Oh, okay.
legislature.
Yes.
And I just want to say something about the housing management body. My whole purpose of running for the election was to be on the lodge board. I campaigned on it. I spoke to every one of my residents. Towards the end of my campaign, my residents were talking about it and mentioning it to me. And what else can I do? I've been chair of that for 10 years anyway. I don't know how many years I've been on it. I am probably the driving force for the new lodge. So whoever takes over from me, realize that we're at a tipping point to get this lodge built. We have to get funding. And yeah, I'm very disappointed I'm not back on it.
Can I cut in brief? I would be willing to relinquish my position for Glenn to get back on it if that doesn't break any policy or protocols.
I think it would be fine.
Council,
You don't have
maybe,
You've been on that for a long time and know more about it than anybody. That continuity is probably more important than me learning something. Maybe next time.
Well, it might be sooner than you think. Thanks, Rick. Don't know. How
We
much I
should-
appreciate that.
perhaps if you did a motion to reconsider the appointment to the housing board,
Okay.
and then council could vote on that, that should,
Yeah, so that's how I would do it and proceed that way. And then I think
because that would align with our procedure bylaw. Does anybody object to that process?
I move that I want to reconsider my election to that board and would recommend that Glenn Kester take my place, if I'm allowed to do that.
So perhaps an administration can advise if you might consider a friendly amendment to your motion just to reconsider the motion appointing members to the Wheatland Housing Management Board to appoint Councillor Kester, Councillor Laprise, and Councillor Eichert, with yourself sitting as alternate. That could be a potential motion.
Yeah, okay.
Because that should cover very clearly the appointment.
Yeah, it should. I think what should happen is that if anyone else would also wants to be nominated, they have their opportunity to do that as well, and then proceed that way.
Just so that we're kind of following.
The exact process that you would have at the start.
Okay. Is that your motion?
Yes.
Okay.
You would be alternate then, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Any questions or discussion, or anybody else who would like to put their name forward? Who hasn't already? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Okay. I believe that brings us to 2.44, appointment of agricultural fieldmen. Page 71 of our organizational meeting package.
Yes, good afternoon, Council. So page 71, So this is just an audit point that we discovered during the ASB audit during 2021. Just a simple appointment by council, appointing Russ Montrath as the agricultural fieldman for Wheatland County.
Council's wishes.
I move the council appoint Russell Montrath as the agricultural fieldman for Wheatland County.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.45, Agriculture and Environment Legislative Appeal Committee appointments.
Yes, and this is just some more administrative work from the ASB department. So just two resolutions that we appoint well, they're right in front of you.
There's two resolutions recommended on page 74. Council's wishes. One for SDAB, acting as the appeal panel under the Weed Control Act, and also under the Soil Conservation Act.
Is this all one?
Two resolutions, they could be made together, I would think, or do you want them separate?
They should be separate
Okay,
because they are
sorry.
two separate acts.
Right, yes, right.
Yeah.
I'll move resolution 1.
Councillor Eichert has moved. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
I'll move resolution 2.
Councillor Bigger
For the
has,
Soil Conservation Act.
sorry. Councillor Bigger has moved. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.46.
Actually,
Good afternoon, Council. Matt from Administration here to present the Subdivision Appeal Board member appointments. We appoint for 3-year terms, and we do have, just for way of background, a SDAV bylaw 2019-10. So Wheatland County must have a subdivision authority, which is the subdivision and appeal board body for the subdivision authority. So members of the board shall be appointed at the organizational meeting or at a time when the position becomes vacant. And you see the two names within the recommendation from administration. I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Council's wishes.
Who are the other names?
That's submitted for appointment. Sorry.
That currently
are on
sit.
the board now.
I can certainly look that up when I go back to my, I don't have them off the top of my head. I do know some of them, but
Council's wishes.
Just a quick question. How did they get on the list? Is it something that you apply for, or were they already on? Or?
yeah, so we solicit for appointments. So when we have a vacancy, we often advertise for SDAB appointments. And at the organizational meeting every single time, we have kind of like a rollover. So should there be vacancies, we do advertise for it. If there's no vacancies, and if someone wishes to reapply, then they reapply through administration. Actually, it's important to note as well, we do have a secretary for the SDAB as well, who is an internal staff member here that does the minutes and kind of administers with the board, acts as their kind of secretary and admin for that board, that governing body. So it's done in-house, and typically, just for information as well, the Planning and Development Department kind of removes itself from the SDAB to be kind of that impartial, like, distance away from it for any decisions that are made. Yeah.
Mostly, I was just wondering if they needed any qualifications to do this, or if they don't need any knowledge or anything.
They do receive training. Yeah.
Yeah, good question. Council's wishes.
I'll make the motion that council approve the appointment of the following individuals to the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board for a 3-year term expiring October 31st, 2024. Jay Anderson and Slavlo Halkovic.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.47, Community Enhancement Regional Board Member-at-Large Appointments.
Yes, good afternoon, Council. So on page 80 of your agenda package is the recommendation from administration on the CURB board. So the CURB board is a board consisting of 14 members that consists of 2 members from each division. They do look at recreation projects throughout the county and award funding to those based on applications. And we do appoint them for a 2-year term.
Council's wishes.
I'll move to, sorry, how do I say this?
You could just say the appointments as recommended by administration.
Appointments as recommended by administration. Thank you.
Any questions or discussion? You could read it if you want. We won't make you. All in favor? Motion is carried. Move to 2.51, upcoming conferences and conventions, RMA Spring 2022 and Fall 2022.
Who's the other one on 6? I think it's Randy. Or I just got.
It would be the same as what was before because they would be midterm. The question was who the other member that serves on CURB for Division 6. We could probably follow up with that.
Sure. We can definitely follow up with that one.
Maybe even just circulate the current composition.
Yes, we can for sure.
2.51, I think we just need resolutions. If it's council's wishes to ratify attendance, typically we send all of council to RMA. It is a good opportunity to connect with councillors in other rural municipalities in Alberta. As well, we have a resolution session where the priority advocacy issues are established by the membership. There's also opportunities to meet with ministers and their ministry staff. Typically, I think on average, we've usually met with 2 to 3 ministries, depending on the priority issues in the county. I believe we do have a request to meet with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. Often we have a kind of a standing request with transportation because there's often ongoing issues regarding transportation issues on provincial roads. Did we have other requests this year for fall convention?
We did not.
So typically all of council does attend. I believe we did discuss an orientation. There are times, I think our last in-person we had municipal affairs and transportation just by chance. Our ministry appointments were made at the same time. So we had half of council attend with the Department of Transportation, half attended with municipal affairs so that we could address both issues simultaneously. More than one issue, transportation, there were several. We would just need a motion.
I so move whatever you said.
I think just
kind of lost it.
approving attendance for all of council to attend both RMA conventions in 2022.
Okay.
Brian, does that suffice?
Yes, that should work.
Oh,
Any questions or discussion? Yeah, Glenn?
We're voting also on the Ag Service Tour in January.
I thought we would just do, anticipating that there may be conversation around 2.52, I thought we would just address each one individually. So we could just look at just RMA for now, then we could do FCM, and then we could do ASB. If that works.
That's fine.
Okay. There's a motion on the floor. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. 2.52, FCM convention. The last 2 FCM conventions have been held virtually. At this point, I believe they are anticipating in person in Regina in June of 2022. Historically, we have had authorization for, I believe it was 3 councillors.
I think it was 3. And
3
it
or
was just
4.
at the
It was like
discretion
half of council.
Yeah, and it was at the discretion of council as well, to as many as you guys would like.
So at times FCM can be quite expensive to attend. It's often in the east because convention facilities in the West often lack the capacity to host this event. It is rural and urban municipalities from all across Canada, so it can be quite large. Alberta does make up a large contingent. I think we had 37% of membership in FCM last year. Don't quote me on that number, that's from memory. It has been contentious at times because we actually brought a resolution forward asking RMA to advocate for perspectives of the Western provinces and the rural perspective to be represented more strongly, both at convention and through FCM efforts. I know Robin Kerpewhite is our Alberta rural representative on the FCM. He actually was appointed chair of the Rural Forum. As well, Paul McLaughlin, our RMA president, sits on the executive and was appointed the chair of the Prairies and Territorial Association. So we do have very strong rural voices at FCM. I have noticed increased representation of more genuine rural issues, even what they were presenting as rural. At the last convention we were at in person, our council did not feel was an accurate representation of like Western rural. There has certainly been a focus on that by the FCM executive and administration and the board itself. Some of the priority issues, so I went to FCM, I believe in 2019. There were several sessions on broadband and connectivity, and I went with a very intentional focus to kind of attend as many sessions on that, both to educate myself, but then did bring reports back. I know we had a contingent attend as well in Halifax the year before that. Yeah, so it is contentious. There are certainly council members who have not found value in the conventions when they've attended. I have found value, but I think you have to really assess the convention and really zero in on sort of sessions that are applicable to our municipality and that might bring value back. Certainly diverse perspectives on it, though.
I don't think we want to add. There's 3 that go now. Wouldn't want to add more to that, that's for sure. And I think like registering is $900 or it's expensive.
Yeah, I can't remember.
1,800. It was 1,800.
Early bird, yeah, might be like 700 or something. I'll look. It is expensive, absolutely.
For myself, I have not attended and I will never attend, so matters not to me.
I feel it might be very advantageous for the new council.
I know I did.
Point of order.
I think it may be very advantageous for the new councillors to attend this so that they can get a feeling for whether or not this is worth the effort. Now, having said that, it's Regina, so.
That's what you.
No, I've attended one of these, and I will not attend another one. I do not believe I can justify this from the county's, from me being there from the county's standpoint. I can see that there is there's some advantages for maybe the Reeve attending. I can see that, but I honestly feel that you should experience this, sort of get the feeling, and maybe it's changed. Maybe it's changed that that they for all the lobbying and that, maybe it'll change. But in 2019 they had no clue what rural was. It wasn't a 20 herd goat farm. It just isn't that. So. Anyways, yeah, so I'm really good with, recommending that the 2 new councillors go and probably the Reeve and bring back a report.
We would just need a resolution approving attendance of 3 counselors at FCM, if that's your...
I don't know if I want to go that far.
You just said...
Agreement of it.
Oh, I see, okay. You don't...
Well, that would be my question. It's not that I'm opposed to going, but if these two feel that strongly that there's no value in it, I'd like to hear, Glenn, have you been, or Donna? Or counselors,
Been
whatever?
to a few of them in 2 different capacities. I was gone to some as being on global affairs. I was, I'll tell you sometime about what I did for global affairs. And I also went as a counselor. I believe in Canada there's rural and urban. There is different definitions of rural in different parts of the country. Our definition is probably the ruralest of the rural. You go to Ontario and we have cities that are smaller than what they define rural as. I believe if you don't go to these conferences and express where rural is, they'll never learn. You only get out of it what you put into it. I know what Tom is speaking about. It had to do with pipelines at the time. Not all rural people in Canada have pipelines. In our county, we have probably 3 times more kilometers of pipe than we have of roads, at least. At one time, we had 14,000 wells. Not many municipalities can say that. But if you want to promote rural, nobody's going to promote it unless you do. They have some conferences there, and you can get with other rural people. And, you can hear their frustrations. They're not much different than ours. I think FCM tried to include rural. I don't know what the fruit of that process was. COVID come. They actually struck a task force of different people in different regions of Western Canada. I believe they called it West. I don't know what the acronym means now anymore. But they interviewed and they tried to put together a document paper, which they did, and you could probably look it up on FCM. But yeah, if you discuss it and don't like it and you don't show up, it's not going to get any better. My perspective anyway.
The one I went to was in 2018. And we had the biggest, Alberta was the most amount of people in the province showed up for it, which tells me that there was a need for them to be heard, right? So Glenn's right to a point, well, if you're not there at the table. But the problem was being too that some of the stuff like your sessions that you'd go to learn stuff, it just didn't always pertain to us. But I believe through Amber, and through our resolution that we put through, they were looking more into bringing in what pertained to us too, so that you have an option to go to. Right. COVID hit, so I never got to go to the next one. But
They were highly motivated to listen to Alberta because there were a few municipalities who did not renew their membership in FCM. And I think they recognize the strength in their Alberta numbers and that they need to represent Alberta. The executive director is relatively new. The former executive director had been in place for over a decade for sure. I have in my head maybe 16 years or something. Don't quote me on that. The new executive director has eliminated one kind of layer of bureaucracy within FCM. She has been focused on fiscal efficiencies for the organization. They do have a large budget. We do currently have an application into FCM for a grant for our asset management program. RMA collaborates with FCM for that program. They have sort of cohorts, if I understand the program correctly, where we would be in a cohort with other Alberta municipalities. The asset management stream oh, I wish I had this right at my fingertips. A huge proportion of the asset management grants that have been awarded are to small rural municipalities, and actually how we would define, so under 10,000 people, they're cut off maybe 15,000. The vast majority of the grants have been provided to those smaller rural municipalities because we typically may not have the capacity in place to do a fulsome asset management program, which is going to be critical going forward. Broadband is certainly a federal advocacy issue. I'm trying to think of some of the other top ones. Yeah, it's...
Amber? I would say though, like, since our resolution, we have not been to FCM.
Yeah.
So I feel that if you guys come back and say, no, they still haven't made any changes and don't feel it's relevant to Alberta, I think at that point, we should just get out of the whole thing.
Right, and that would have been the question that I have. If the two new people go, how are we going to know what's we'd need a package to say this is what you need to look for, because we haven't been to any of them.
I would ask council consideration for my attendance if it works. I also find it a good opportunity to connect with some of our urban counterparts that we don't necessarily, like for example, they don't attend RMA, things like that, where we typically would connect. So it can be good for that. And I really do try and bring the absolute most value back to council while I'm there. I would be able to compare. I'm very aware of what the 2019 convention looked like. I have attended several virtual FCM events, board meetings, just as a volunteer. And I definitely am seeing progress. There's certainly further progress that could be made there for sure. And it's always going to be contentious. What I keep in my mind, I kind of developed this analogy of FCM, and I kind of think as FCM as like Costco. And when I go to Costco, our family does not eat halal, but they provide halal meat for people that do eat, like are looking for meat that's processed in that manner. I don't buy that meat, but I don't stop going to Costco because that doesn't apply to me. They sell many, many products that when I go to Costco or our local grocery store or whatever, the parts store, you might not need the John Deere parts, or you might not need, you know, the case parts, but you don't stop going to a parts store because they're carrying parts that don't apply to you. FCM has to apply to a very diverse range of municipalities across Canada. And we are a minority, like really small rural municipalities across Canada are certainly a minority in terms of population density, not in terms of land management. And I think that's a challenge that we convey to the provincial government, to the federal government, like at all levels, that even though we may not represent a huge proportion of the population, we do manage a huge proportion of the land and the resources, and are a huge force in terms of economic development, GDP, job creation, things like that. And so I think we do need to have a voice. We need to make those connections. And I agree with Donna, absolutely, like assess on a yearly basis, for sure.
Would it make sense to limit it, given the cost to the Reeve and one councillor?
What is the cost? Did you find that?
No.
I can't. I can only find like booth registration.
1,800.
I would guess airfare, hotel, registration, meals, a bit of mileage, $2,000, $2,500 maybe.
Oh, it's got to be more than that.
Not a heck of a lot more different FCM. It's just the plane ticket.
Yeah, yeah.
But then you don't have any driving mileage, so it's
Right. Offsets.
just that it's farther away, it looks.
Yep,
I mean, the fact that it's in Saskatchewan this year is,
that will help.
will help.
Absolutely.
One thing I learned when I went to FCM, years ago, the county put together, with the help of a lawyer, by law on, we had the right to mandate that you had to be a member of First Call, One Call. We put it together. Lawyer did. An outfit come in and didn't want to follow the bylaw, and they laid the cable in the other ditch. We lost it, took it all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada. FCM fought it for us because it had ramifications, no doubt. It was a nice, if you can imagine the bylaw the lawyer wrote, I'm thinking it's still on our books. I think it's the same one we still have. Should look at it. I was able to talk to the lawyer that fought it on our side, and he wanted to know who did it. I told him. He says it was way too long. They fought on some little technicality on it, and after talking to him, we come to the conclusion, or at least he did, if we just wrote a bylaw said, if you want to lay cable in Wheatland County, you belong to one call for second, third reading. He says, yeah, there's no interpretation about that. But you add and you talk forever on something, somebody's going to interpret it differently. I thought that was probably worth the entire conference right there. You never know what you pick up when you're there. So, yeah. I brought it back. I don't think anything changed with that bylaw, and we haven't had anybody doubt it since. But I would think maybe take a look at it for a read sometime.
So another opportunity we have as well with FCM, that's a good point, Glenn. They do at times fund projects or advocacy or things like that that are very applicable to us as a municipality, or more generally as a rural municipality. Another opportunity we have is if we have ideas, we can, for example, they do have a rural stream at the convention. So if we have ideas of this is some messaging that we feel really strongly needs to get out to municipalities all across Canada, through our representatives on the FCM board, we can present that. I did have a meeting with Anne-Lisa Jensen when she was our rural representative and reiterated much of what Councillor Eichert was really the impetus behind our resolution. Walked through that resolution and just outlined some ideas that I had in terms of what could be critical. And then she had taken that, she sat on the resolution committee and had taken that forward. So we can be proactive too if anybody has ideas about messaging, or if there are workshops or subject areas that you would like more information on, either you can directly contact or let me know. I chat with Robin quite frequently, obviously chat with Paul regularly, could certainly put that up through kind of the pipeline to FCM as well. Because I always think if we're going to complain about something, we should also be offering solutions. So if anybody on council has ideas, please either reach out directly yourself, or I'm happy to convey them on your behalf. We don't have a motion yet.
Are you motioning that we carry on with it as a member, or that we have to pick people that want?
You wouldn't have to pick. I think typically we just, at the organizational meeting, have a resolution approving attendance for X number of councillors, and then we can detail later. None of the registration, you can sign up right now to be on a information list, but there's no details released at this point, from what I could find.
Well, I'll move that we attend the FCM convention, 2022 convention in Regina, and send 3 councillors.
Councillor Laprice has a motion on the floor.
Do we have to wait for him to be back?
Yeah, we should wait.
So,
Can you-
on here, November 16th is a regular meeting. Regular council. Yeah.
That was just circulated. Oops.
No big deal. No big deal.
That's okay. We do have a motion on the floor approving attendance of 3 councillors at the FCM convention scheduled for June in Regina. And unless you have any questions or discussion, we can call the vote.
Did we name the counselors, or?
No.
We'll do that next.
Typically, what we do at the organizational meeting is approve the attendance, and then
Gotcha.
we can sort out details. Occasionally, the dates don't work with somebody's calendar, or something comes up, or that type of thing. And just because we have 3 approved to attend does not mean 3 have to attend. It's just the funds are allocated, and they are there if somebody would like to attend. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. 2.53, Provincial Agricultural Services Board 2022 Convention. So typically, I believe we approve, and this is going off memory, attendance for any counselor who would like to attend either the ASB Provincial Convention or Farm Tech, if I recall correctly. Does that sound right? But we wouldn't attend both. We typically haven't had everybody attend, but we approve attendance so that if people can, it's there. I believe it's been budgeted for in the ASB budget. Or historically, it has been.
I believe so, yes.
Council's wishes.
Just the quick commentary, Ag Service Convention, Conference, same thing to me, is the government take on things, procedural type thing. It's government does this, we do this, we're mandated to do that, and what can we do about soil and dirt and everything. Farm Tech one is farmer run, and it's through their eyes, through industry's eyes. Been a long time since I've been to one, but you get to see the latest in gadgets you can have for your air seeder, your guidance systems. So it's farmer driven. It's a good conference. They have world-class speakers there too, but the focus is differently. So it's good to have some to go to both, and that's why we've kind of always done that, just to give you an appreciation of such.
Yeah, good points. Absolutely. There is a resolution session at the ASB convention as well that sets the advocacy priorities from an agricultural perspective. At times, there are resolutions at ASB that align with resolutions. I believe we have one coming that's going to ASB provincially and to RMA. So RMA does coordinate with ASB as well to coordinate advocacy on issues that pertain to both organizations. Council's wishes.
I'm doing all of it.
Coffee for everybody? May I serve you all?
I'll move that we approve for all of council and ASB members be allowed to go to Farm Tech or ASB conference.
Any questions or discussion?
So is it fair to say that the ASB convention would be more strategic discussion and Farm Tech would be more tactical? Is that kind of what I'm hearing? Okay.
Well, strategic from perspective of the government. Could be strategic Farm Tech too, but a different perspective,
Right.
right?
But I think it's important that the government understands that their strategic direction may not be in alignment with the people that actually farm. That was kind of, to me, that's
what you
important.
really meant to say? Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to have someone there because.
both.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, I would say from a governance perspective, like the ASB convention would be more closely aligned with our governance role. Right. But there would be key information at Farm Tech available as well. At times, there's crossover as well. Like, we had an excellent session at the ASB convention in 2020 all around innovation in farming. And so they had several industry representatives from across Canada doing some of the most innovative tech. And that was really good. I actually was able to bring some of that back to producers here. You know, like there's some of that cross-sharing of information that happens there as well from an industry perspective, but more of that happens at Farm Tech. There's a motion on the floor. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. CAO Henderson, I'm assuming 2.6 is just an information, the orientation documents in the portal?
Yes, that's correct. I'll be emailing those out shortly.
Okay.
And then we do need one last motion prior to the meeting adjourning, and that's just a motion to destroy the ballots.
Oh, right, yes, all of the ballots.
I'll move that all ballots be destroyed.
Any questions? All in favor? Motion is carried. If anybody would like a paper copy of the orientation documents, please let CAO Henderson know, and he'll compile those for you. I did measure my binder. It's about 4 or 5 inches tall. So everything is available digitally. It's just what your preference is, and I think CAO Henderson can probably print it more efficiently from his perspective than we could if you do want a print copy. Yes?
Okay, on this orientation, we had the lawyer there, and he was explaining conflict of interest as it relates to pecuniary interest. Right away, my mind went to Scott, and he keeps bowing out of because of his reasons. But a lot of time, we don't have a pecuniary interest when we're talking about. So I'm thinking when we do, you're going to be doing a board thing, I'm thinking to get, for me, and I'm thinking for Scott too, to know exactly when he should be stepping out and not, because Derek said, well, you all know what he said, and I took great interest in it. So, like today, I didn't think, my opinion, I didn't need to step out today.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So when we do that board training, it may be good to have some time built into that for specific questions, just for an opportunity for anybody who might have pecuniary interest to get some more clarity on when exactly we should be recusing ourselves, when it's appropriate to be involved. And that might be a good opportunity to solidify that, because you're right, it is. You need to make sure that you are voting when appropriate and not when you shouldn't be. So that's an excellent point. I'm sure administration can build that, an opportunity for clarity on that into that board training. We already have a resolution on that. That brings us to the conclusion of our organizational meeting. If there's no other matters, I will adjourn our meeting. Meeting adjourned. And if you guys are all right with it, we could...
Call recording and transcription are turned off.
Does anybody need a break before we start our regular council meeting?